Namaste and welcome everyone for this it's going to be very interesting and engaging session to learn about a great Virangana queen from our past, India's history. My name is Beloo Mehra. Most everybody knows, but maybe there are a few people here new in our group today. Among many other works that I take care of at Sri Aurobindo Society, one of my main tasks is to edit an online monthly journal called Renaissance. So if we were to give a tagline to that journal, it will be Integral Yoga for India's Rebirth. So the idea of Renaissance in India by looking at the various aspects of integral yoga in the light of what Sri Aurobindo's mother's teachings. And of course, when we talk about all life is yoga, so one of the things that we do at Renaissance is to really look at all aspects of life in the light of Sri Aurobindo's and mother's teachings. And I think in May of this year, if I remember the month correctly, we had taken up this theme. So every month we take up different theme, and in the month of May, we had taken up a theme on literature, life, literature and yoga. And recently in the October, we took up the theme Divine Shakti. So since the month time, we took up literature, and then I knew that we planned for a year in advance Divine Shakti. I had Nandini in my mind to invite to do this kind of a program on this historical narrative of Rani Durgawati, who combines both the world of literature and the history, as well as the idea of divine feminine, divine Shakti. So I just want to kind of really say how pleased I am that finally those two themes came together, and with her busy traveling schedule, she's been on a Lit Fest circuit, and this book is doing so well. I don't have my copy, but I have my copy here in the Kindle. So I've read most of it, since few things, but I'm looking forward to what she has to share about the book. Just to get us started, I want us to kind of recall what Mother had said and what Sri Aurobindo had said about how high quality literature can help us prepare in our consciousness as we proceed on the path of cultivating good taste and refining our vital. So with that in mind, and also Sri Aurobindo's emphasis on looking at Indian history from a subjective point. In fact, one of the things, if you read, I think Mother at one point had asked Professor Kittu Reddy, to take this topic of rewriting Indian history from a very individual subjective point. And he has attempted that in a couple of books that he's written on Indian history and culture. And there he reminds us at many places how much emphasis Sri Aurobindo put on looking at subjective forces that have shaped Indian history. And whatever little I have come to know of Rani Durgawati's work and her place in Indian history, that really stands out. And I'm sure we will learn more as Nandini speaks more about her work, her research in putting together this book on the great Virangana queen, Rani Durgawati. So before Nandini, I request Nandini to speak, maybe Gayatri, I would request my colleague Gayatri to share a little bit about her background, Nandini's background, and also about the publications wing of Sri Aurobindo Society, Auropublications. So Renaissance Journal and Auropublications are collaborating to bring together this series of what we call it as Samvād, a series featuring books, authors and book lovers. So every couple of months we plan to take up a new author and a new book. So we're very happy that we're starting with you, Nandini. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Gayatri, please.
Yes, thank you, Beloo, and welcome, Nandini. Hello, everyone. So it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce this afternoon's author, our very own Nandini Sengupta, the first author of Auropublications and Renaissance Samvād series. Before I introduce her, I'll just quickly go over a few lines about what we do at Auropublications. Auropublications, the publishing division of the Sri Aurobindo Society, publishes spiritually themed books while striving towards practical applicability. It creates multimedia and audiovisual products containing deep insight and values. There is, of course, a special focus on the integral yoga and the vision of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. A conscious attempt is made at every step of the production and distribution to reflect the ideals of truth, perfection, harmony, and work as sadhana, as an offering to the divine. So we'll move on to Nandini Sengupta. As I said, it's my pleasure. I've known her for some years now. And she's an Indian writer and journalist based in Pondicherry. She became fascinated with India's glorious past after a visit to Ajanta-Ellora caves in 2007, which soon inspired her to write in the historical fiction genre. Her best-selling titles include The Blue Horse and Other Amazing Animals from Indian History, published by Hachette India, which was shortlisted for both the Author Awards 2022 and the Bal Sahitya Purishkar 2023, the Gupta Empire trilogy comprising The King Within, The Poisoned Heart, and The Ocean's Bone, published by HarperCollins India, and Kalidas, a gem among poets, published by Good Earth Publications. So Rani Durgawati, The Forgotten Life of a Warrior Queen, published by Penguin India, is a first narrative non-fiction biography. It made it to the 2023 Author Award shortlist in the non-fiction category. So many congratulations. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to be able to speak here because many years ago, maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, my daughter and I used to come to this building all the time when my late husband Shumitra used to work for Sri Aurobindo Society. And so to me, this is once again serendipity, which is a word that has guided me while writing this book on Virangana Durgawati. I find that this platform is particularly serendipitous for this book because Virangana Durgawati, India has a long tradition of warrior queens, of fantastic, kick-ass, competent queens. But Durgawati is very, very special. She's special because I cannot think of any other historical figure who has been deified after her death by her subjects and has remained a goddess in collective and popular memory for more than 500 years. And she stands out not only because she was an exceptional queen, which she was an exceptional and competent administrator, which she was, and she was an exceptional warrior, which she was. But in popular imagination, she has been turned into a kind of doppelganger of her celestial namesake. So if you look at, and one of the things that fascinated me about the research that I did for this book was to look at some of the Gond folk songs and folk tales surrounding the queen. And the interesting thing about that is that these songs have remained more or less unchanged for the past 500 years. Next year, and we are going to enter 2024 in just a couple of days, in fact, 2 weeks or a little more than that. Next year, 2024, is the 500th birth anniversary of Rani Durgawati. And the Government of India is doing a series of programs to commemorate this event. I'm so glad that this is happening now because Rani Durgawati, for the better part of 70 years, has been deliberately and definitively forgotten. And we will come to, in just a bit, we'll come to why that happened, why this very, very interesting, very, very inspiring character from our history was forgotten and how she was remembered. If that sounds like a conundrum, because in Rani Durgawati's case, it is. She was forgotten and she has been remembered, both at the same time. But the interesting thing coming back to Rani Durgawati is, when I started my research about Rani Durgawati, and the first time I actually visited Jabalpur, I went to some of the places that were associated with her. One of them was this very small, very nondescript little Shiva temple on the banks of the Narmada in Narsinghpur district. Barman Ghat is the name of the ghat. And I sat there, and I have very bad knees, so I always take time to clamber up the stairs to go and get into temples and stuff like that. So I was sitting outside, and I was watching a steady stream of people who were carrying flowers and offerings for the deity inside. And many of them were women, many of them were wearing yellow saris, like the one I'm wearing today. And I caught a hold of the journalist in me, sort of was intrigued, and I asked them, I said, you know, why are you wearing yellow, and what is the significance? And they said, and I'm going to switch to Hindi here just for authenticity's sake. They said, "Ye to Rani Durgawati ki rang hai." So I said, what do you mean by that? So they said that the gowns of the area, and I'm going to in just a bit give you an idea of what area I'm talking about, but the gowns of central India, the tribals, wear yellow in memory of Rani Durgawati. And there is a little clip that I have where, you know, every year they come on 2 days, twice a year, 24th of June and 5th of October. 24th of June was the day that she sacrificed her life. So that is remembered and commemorated as Balidan Divas. And 5th of August is her birthday, is her birth anniversary. And on those 2 days you will find the tribal gowns, both men and women and children as well. They will come to her Samadhi Sthal in Narayanala near Jabalpur, just outskirts of Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh. And they will sing songs, and they will dance, and they will wear yellow in her honor, because to them she is Mata Durga. So who was Rani Durgawati and where did she rule? Rani Durgawati was actually, she herself was not Goan. Remember, the Goans have taken to their hearts a person, a historical figure, who herself was not tribal. She was a Chandel Rajput, and she was famed for her beauty and for being a crack shot. And she married, she had a whirlwind romance with the crown prince of Garha Mandla or Garha Katanga, which was a Goan kingdom. Now, Gondwana, the land of the Goans, comprised most of central India, including Madhya Pradesh in particular, but also parts of Bundelkhand, Chhattisgarh, and parts of what is now Andhra Pradesh as well, parts of Nagpur, which later became Nagpur state. So that entire region was called Gondwana, or the land of the Goans. Gondwana was divided into 4 principal kingdoms. So there was Deoghar, there was Kharla, there was Chanda, but the biggest kingdom was in the north, which is Garha Mandla or Garha Katanga. It was ruled by the Rajgons, and Rani Durgawati was married into the Rajgon family when she married Dalpat Shah, who was the crown prince of the Rajgon dynasty. Now again, when I started researching Rani Durgawati, the thing that struck me most was, this is a woman who lived 500 years ago, and yet she seems more modern than most women I meet today. Here is a woman who marries against her father's wishes. Her father tells her that you are going to have a swayamvar. She sends a little note to her boyfriend and tells him, listen, you know, there's going to be a swayamvar. You're not going to be called because you're not Rajput. You are Gond, you're tribal Gond. In medieval India, these sort of non-caste marriages, inter-caste marriages were not common. They were never common, but in medieval India in particular, they were not common. So he comes with a bunch of his soldiers, carries her away, they elope, they go back to his kingdom, and they get married there. And they have a blissful marriage. The Gonds love her. They take her instantly to their hearts, and she has a little boy. Veer Narayan is born. Dalpat Shah takes over his father. Sangram Shah was a very, very powerful, competent ruler, and he dies. Dalpat Shah takes over, and then tragedy strikes. 5 years later, Dalpat Shah dies. It is not clear how he dies, history is silent about that, but it seems that it was a sudden illness of some sort that claimed his life. At this point, this is the second time that Rani Durgawati shows what she is made of. Dalpat Shah has a younger brother, Chanda Shah, who has obviously designs on the throne. The prince, the heir apparent, Veer Narayan, is only either 3 or 5 years old, depending on which source you are looking at. So he is a minor, they need a regent. Chanda Shah wants the throne, obviously, but Rani Durgawati, so he suggests to the courtiers that she should do sati, and she says, no, absolutely not. I am going to rule the kingdom. So not only does she win over the courtiers who comprise the major power faction in her husband's court, she banishes her brother-in-law. So much so that as long as she is alive, for the next 15 years he never sets foot in Garhwal ever again. He just disappears from the story till she dies, and he comes right back, crawling right back. And not only does she not do sati, she gives up parda. This is medieval India, she is a Rajput queen, but she definitively gives up parda, which I'm going to come in just a minute, why there are so many stories connecting her to places and temples and ghats all over Garhwal, because she was seen. And you will see that everywhere you go, the heart of her empire, the heart of her kingdom was Jabalpur. But not just Jabalpur and the surrounding districts, currently the surrounding districts of Narsinghpur, Mandla, Dindora, Damo, the entire parts of the Satpura range, the entire region was her kingdom. And all over there are stories connected to the Rani going to this ghat for her bath, the Rani going to that lake because she liked to take a boat ride in the moonlight, the Rani going to this temple or that temple, and so on. So she was not a person who closeted herself away and disappeared from public view. She was a very publicly seen queen. And everywhere you go in Jabalpur and the region, you will find, if you read the book, there are pictures also. She is seen like this. Like this. And if you can just have the slide, if I can just show you the next one. Yeah. So this is Rani Durgawati's Balidan Divas. This year I went there, 24th of June. This is her Samadhi Sthal in the place where she fought her final battle called Narayanala. Narayanala is like a confluence of two rivers, the Gond, the Son and the Gond river, and in between is this narrow defile, which is where the battle was fought. And this place has now been turned into a very beautiful memorial. As you can see here also, she is dressed in chainmail. She is not a coy, feminine figure. There is always a sword. She carries a sword, or sometimes the sword is open. There's a naked sword in her hand, and she is wearing chainmail armor. In many places, you will find she is shown astride her favorite elephant, Sarman. So she is very much the protective patron saint of the region, and the people look at her as a symbol of protection. And if you see some of the Gond songs, many of them are quoted in the book, where the people call her Mata Chandi. Chandi is a fierce feminine version of Durga. Ran Chandi, the version of goddess Durga who goes to battle to take on the demons. That is the avatar that her people associated Rani Durgawati with, and they continue to do so. And when I went there this year, when I was just standing there, these people were coming in, they were filing in, they were singing their songs. It gave me goosebumps to hear those songs, because those are the very same songs that are mentioned in the book. Teri Nana, More Nana, Rani Durgawati Jo Aaye, Ranchandi Jo Aaye. The songs have remained the same. The way the people venerate her have remained the same, despite definitive efforts to whitewash that history. This fierce feminine form of her also combines with some very notable administrative skills. She was a very competent monarch. And again, this is something that the Gond folk songs and folk traditions reference. But there is another source from where we get information. The interesting thing about Rani Durgawati, and this you will agree, the most important source of information about a medieval king or a queen is the court hagiography. Right? If you look at Akbar, for instance, who was a contemporary of Rani Durgawati and her enemy as well, the biggest source of information about Akbar comes from his court hagiographer, Abul Fazl's Akbarnama, which is a fascinating document. But in Rani Durgawati's case, most of the information about her comes from two sources. Either they are her enemies or they are the folk traditions. And you must understand that historians till recently used to disregard folk traditions as being untrustworthy sources of information. That is one of the reasons why Rani Durgawati was also sort of edited out of the mainstream historical narrative. She was a woman. She was a woman who ruled a tribal kingdom in the heart of tribal India. She was not Rajput, she was Rajput, but she became a Gond queen. And she took on one of the greats of our history, who was Akbar. So therefore, her story became a footnote in his story. But if you go to these places, you will see how she is the main character. She holds the central narrative. She's not a footnote. She is very much in charge under the spotlight. And the interesting thing about Rani Durgawati is again and again, not only do the enemies, including Abul Fazl, who is the hagiographer of her enemy and therefore has no real reason to sing her pains. But if you see how he has described her in the Akbarnama, he describes her with definitive respect, sometimes grudging respect, bordering on reverence. And he again and again he says, she never lacked bravery, she never lacked valor. She had a complete measure of beauty and grace. She was a competent ruler. Her people loved her. This is the enemy hagiographer talking about her. Is that not unusual? And you have people like Ferishta, who was also chronicler, Deccani chronicler, Dakhni chronicler. Again, Ferishta took his cue from people like Badauni and Abul Fazl in Akbar's court, so from the enemy camp. But if you look at how Ferishta describes her, similar vein. 200 years later, if you look at some of the documents left behind by British civilians, people like William Thuggy Sleeman, people like Alexander Cunningham, people like James Prinsep, people like James Forsyth, all of these people who tramped through central India. Immediately after the Third Anglo-Maratha War, they were trying to map that area and bring it under first the East India Company and then the British Raj dispensation. All of these gentlemen speak about her with incredible amount of respect. Not one of them talks about her in a disparaging way. Every single account definitely references her romance, the romance of her story, the fact that here was a lone woman standing up to bullying by a person who was definitively one of the most powerful men in the medieval world. But also the fact that she was, apart from being a warrior and being a subject of romance, an exceptional ruler, a person who looked after the interests of her own subjects, which was by no means common in the medieval world. And we see that these people talk about her in definitely purple prose. That's the only way I can describe it. If you read what Sleeman has written, Sleeman, of course, is no fan of Indian monarchs. If you look at how Sleeman describes Wajid Ali Shah, You will see what I mean. Wajid Ali Shah the poor man was treated really badly by the East India Company, and if you have watched, any of you have watched Shatranj Ki Khiladi by Satyajit Ray, you will see how heartbreaking it was, the way he was sort of exiled from his kingdom and his people. And yet and in fact, in the film also, Amjad Khan, who plays Wajid Ali Shah, sort of mentions Sleeman many times, calls him Siliman Bahadur in the most disparaging terms. That was Sleeman. But when it comes to Rani Durgawati, his tone changes completely. He is fascinated by this Indian queen. He calls her the Indian Boudica. And there are people like I. Chesterton who calls her the very bloom of Indian womanhood, like Sita herself. So this kind of praise gazing becomes interesting when we see how then, post-independence, in the next 70, 80 odd years, she was forgotten. Suddenly she becomes just a Gond queen, just a tribal footnote. She is no longer mainstream. We have forgotten her. And we have forgotten her also because Indian history has a definite male gaze. We have a whole line of really sassy, really powerful, competent queens. But if we look at the way our narratives are structured, very often they are forgotten. They are erased out of the mainstream. And that is the fate that was reserved for Rani Durgawati till now. So I'm so happy that on her 500th anniversary, her story is being reclaimed. And when you go to Jabalpur, you speak to people there, both tribal, Gond and otherwise, you will see that they say that, "Ye to aap logo ka baat hai." We never forgot. Every single person, every single child on the streets, if you ask them, they will have a story about Rani Durgawati. Some of it is myth, some of it is memory, some of it is history, but all of it ties into this figure who was to them and continues to be their most important model model. At this point, I would ask Beloo to Gayatri to sort of continue the discussion on specific points that she had.
I was going to say if there are any questions at this point, or you want to discuss something with
because
Nandini.
I'm originally from Madhya Pradesh. I've been to Jabalpur many times.
Wonderful.
And I have seen in Bhopal, the folk museum, the Gonds and Durgawati's figure, the same that you are showing.
Yes.
I'm recollecting it 25 years back because I didn't go recently, but I didn't see that museum. So in Madhya Pradesh and maybe even in Chhattisgarh, the name of Durgawati is honored like something by the common people.
Yeah.
आप दुर्गावती जैसी बहुत हीरोइन बन रही हो.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to share.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, can we see the next slide, please?
Yes.
Okay. So this, I'll just very quickly go through the slides. This is, if you go to Narayanala, to the Samadhi Sthal, the outskirts of Jabalpur, it is beautiful. It's my request. Please do visit if you haven't visited. So there is a Narayanala, as I said, is in the there are two rivers on two ends, and there's a narrow defile in the middle. And on one side is Rani Durgawati Samadhi Sthal, and across the road is Veer Narayan, her teenage son's Samadhi Sthal. Veer Narayan was only 18 years old when he died, fighting for his people. He was 3 years younger than Emperor Akbar at that time. Akbar was 21, Veer Narayan was 18. How did he die? There are references again in Mughal chronicles that in the first battle, the Battle of Narayanala was fought over 3 days. If we can have the next slide. This is in the Sangrahashala or the museum, Jabalpur Museum, where, as you can see, Rani Durgawati is shown astride her dappled grey elephant sarman. Interestingly, if you go to the Narayanala Samadhi Sthal, you will find that the Gonds give what is known as Diyabati offering. So they put lamps and flower offering to Rani Durgawati goes, she's the goddess. But they also do a similar Diyavati offering for her elephant. And in that Narai Nala Samadhi Sthal, there is a huge statue of Sarman, the elephant. And when I went there this time, I saw these Gond women coming and doing a circumambulation around the elephant and doing the Diyavati offering for the elephant. So the elephant is also equally important in local folklore. Again, there is no actual historical document backing it, but mythology, memory, folklore always has history at its heart. So if you go to local folklore, they say that in the battle of Narayanala, when Durgavati died, sitting astride the elephant also died, but before it died, it covered Rani Durgavati's body with its own, so that the queen's body would not be defiled by enemy soldiers. And this is something that the Bones believe to this day, that Sarman protected Rani Durgavati's honor after her death. That is why Sarman is there in the Samadhi Sthal as well. Can we have the next slide? This is a very interesting legend. These are panels that are there. These are pictorial panels that are there in the Sangranashala, in the museum, Jabalpur Museum. And this particular story refers to, again, this is a legend. There is no contemporary primary source that confirms this legend. But according to this legend, Akbar had heard of Rani Durgavati's Diwan Alhar Kaist, who was a very, very smart, very competent prime minister. And when he heard about Rani Durgavati, he had sent her some gold bangles, saying that you are just a woman, what are you doing trying to run a country, leave that to men folk like us. And she, for her part, sent him a pinjar, a cotton carding tube, golden pinjar, saying, you may be a man, but you are good enough to do the kind of basic work that people do, weavers do. So stick to that. Leave running of a kingdom to competent people like me. And this kind of legend also shows that in popular imagination and in popular memory, they did not see Akbar as this, the great. They saw him as somebody who was Rani Durgavati's equal. In fact, Abul Fazl actually quotes Rani Durgavati, saying that Abul Fazl is the most competent, accepted source of information on Rani Durgavati because he was her contemporary. And he quotes her saying that, why should I bow down to Asaf Khan, who is just a general under Akbar? If Akbar wants to talk to me, I am a sovereign monarch like him. Let us talk as equals. So that kind of brings to mind the way Porus spoke to Alexander. Speak to me as a king should speak to another king. So this level of self-respect, this level of confidence is something that Rani Durgavati had, and the popular imagination of the to this day remembers that. We have the next slide, please. This shows the battle of Singorgar, or the battle of Narayanala. As you can see, it's a frenetic battle. Here, I just want to mention very quickly why Rani Durgavati is considered such an able battle strategist. What she did, and this is not the first time, in her 15-year reign, she faced more than 50 skirmishes. So almost every year there were many skirmishes that she faced, border incursions. That was because her kingdom was surrounded by the proverbial being jackals. They all thought that a very prosperous kingdom headed by a woman was waiting to be annexed. What is a woman doing handling a kingdom like that? They thought it would be easy. They thought wrong. So they were time and time again, and remember her army was not as well trained and standardized and weaponized the way the Mughal army was. The Mughal army was a beautiful war machinery. They were very well trained, everybody was uniformly armed, uniformly trained, and they were like Greek legionnaires, you know what I mean. Her army was not like that. Her mountainous kingdom was divided into Gar districts or fort districts, and they were all under local rajas who all owed allegiance to her. In times of battle, they would send her men. So these men were basically armed and trained by these different rajas. So some were very good, some were very bad, some were middling. They were not uniformly trained, nor were they uniformly armed. Some of them had muskets, some of them had just axes, some of them had bows and arrows. They were not uniformly armed. Also, they did not have, very important, cannons. Her army did not have cannons, which the Mughal army did. Cannons, they did not have cannons. So now, how do you then explain that this person who has this ragtag army, not that they were not brave, they were very brave. The Gonds fought bravely to the last man. But they just did not have the numbers, they did not have the weaponry, they did not have the logistic support that, say, a far better equipped imperial army did. How then did she survive for 15 years? Very simple. The Gonds knew their topography. They would always fight in a way that they could make the best use of their mountain kingdom. Every single time they would trick the enemy into a mountain defile, and the Gonds were expert archers. They were very, very good with the bow and arrow. They would be positioned along the mountain tops, and snipers would take out people. So in a narrow mountain file, you cannot bring cannons inside. You have to come in a single or a double file. And the archer sitting above, you are just sitting down. And she repeated this strategy again and again and again with spectacular success, including what people don't remember. If you go to Wikipedia will tell you, Rani Durgawati was a Gond queen who lost against Akbar's general Asaf Khan in the Battle of Narayanala. One line. It's not true, because in the Battle of Narayanala was fought over 3 days. In the first Battle of Narayanala, Rani Durgawati was actually successful because she tricked Asaf Khan into Narayanala. See, can you see, it is a narrow defile, and Asaf Khan came with 50,000. If you go according to Badauni or Abul Fazl, his force was 5 times that of Rani Durgawati's. He had horses. Her forces did not have horses, they had elephants. Okay, so there was an elephant corps, and they had no cannons. And yet she won the first day because she did the same thing. She said, we will position ourselves along the defile and take them out. And in the first Battle of Narayanala, she was victorious. Asaf Khan lost 300 men. How do we know this? Abul Fazl tells us. So it is Abul Fazl himself who admits that it was a victory for her in his hagiography on Akbar. Right? So he tells us that she is victorious. Then what happens? She goes and tells her generals, look, we have won a great victory. The Gonds are ecstatic. They couldn't believe that they could actually, be victorious against the Mughal army. This is the imperial army, right? She tells them, we will lose tomorrow. We have to attack them tonight. We have to neutralize those guns. If we don't do it, Asaf Khan is going to bring the guns into the defile through the night. Tomorrow morning we will lose. And they did not listen to her. So it is not because she was wrong, it's because her generals, who were full of adrenaline at that point, said, but we've just won a great victory. Why do we need to go and attack in the night? We don't fight at night. Medieval warfare meant that the war ended with sundown. Typically, they did not fight at night. There was another person who did, and with devastating success. His name was Shivaji.
Yes.
He broke the rules. And Rani Durgawati wanted to do the same thing. She wanted to take the fight to the Mughals in the night. And she begged her generals. And they said no. Then she comes back. And all of this is described in detail by Abul Fazl. If you read the Akbarnama, it is amazing. It is almost like you can see the slides in front of your eyes. She comes back to her tent. She calls a close group of generals who are the closest to her. And she begs them. She says, I will lead you. I don't need too many men. I just need 40, 50 men. Please, let us attack them now. Let us not allow them to regroup. And they don't listen. They say, we've just won a victory. So next morning, when they wake up, they find that the guns are in position and it is exactly as she said it. Yet, for the better part of the day, till third prahar means till about 3:30, 4 in the afternoon, wave after wave after wave Mughal attack is repulsed by her son, Bin Nadan, 18-year-old Bin Nadan. And then he's injured. He's injured very badly. What she does is she sends him away to her fortress in Chauragarh. Chauragarh is in the Satpura hills. And it's a very inaccessible fortress. I myself could not go up there. I used drone footage to see what it looks like now. It's hauntingly beautiful. I cannot even begin to tell you how beautiful it is. So she sends him away to Chauragarh, to the capital fortress, and she enters the battlefield on her elephant. Once, remember this is medieval warfare. The rank and file will fight as long as they can see the monarch up there. Okay? They have no way of, there's no mobile phone, they have no way of knowing whether that person is injured or dead. They can see their king being carried away from the battlefield. They have no way of knowing whether he's dead or alive. They start deserting. So her rank starts to diminish, gets smaller and smaller. At which point she enters. And for the next hour, hour and a half, she is fobbing off the enemy. Then she takes the first arrow, which is at a temple. She pulls it out, the arrowhead remains. The next arrow is here, on her neck. Pulls it out, but she is losing too much blood. So she swoons, right? She loses consciousness. Now her men fighting below think she's dead. There's no one to tell them she's not dead. Right? So they start deserting in droves. By the time she comes to, there are only about 300 men left. And she is surrounded. This is the scene, as you can see. Surrounded by Mughal soldiers. And her elephant is bleeding. Her trusted elephant, Samvād, is bleeding. He's going to fall too. And she tells her Mahut, you have to kill me. I am not going to be taken alive. Death before dishonor. Okay? And he says, I can't do it. Once again, a man lets her down. He says, I'm not going to do it. You are like my mother. You are a goddess. I can't kill you. And so she takes the dagger from his girdle and kills herself, stabs herself. So this is the scene that is shown here, this frenetic bloodletting that you can see. This is inspired by a similar picture which is there in the Akbarnama. I tried, and this is a major pet peeve, I mention it in every single talk. I tried to get a copy of that picture. It shows Rani Durgawati bleeding. She is wearing a printed jama dress, full mail armor. You can see the arrow sticking out from here, the arrow sticking out from here. She's killing herself. It's a very dramatic picture. It is currently with the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and I did try to get it, but they asked for a horrendously steep fee, and I could not, my publisher could not pay that much. You know, we in India don't make that kind of money writing books, so if I had to pay that money, I would have had to pay it out of my pockets, so we could not get that picture for this book. And I think it is shameful that the British government is making money from heritage looted from us and then putting a toll on it to be made accessible to Indian researchers writing about our own past. But be that as it may, that picture was not available. This, however, this picture is there. If you want to see it, it's there in Chennai Museum, in Egmont Museum. This picture is there. And it was made available to me. The museum authorities were very, very sweet, very helpful. And I could get a picture of hers to grace the cover of my book. Can we see the next slide? This is a legend of Sangram Shah. This is Dalpat Shah's father, Rani Durgawati's father-in-law, who also has a number of very interesting and sometimes very bloody legends associated with his name. Again, interestingly, some of these legends have been documented by none other than Suleiman Bahadur, William Thagi Sleepy himself. Can we see the next slide? Again, this is the battle of Singorgarh. Now, what happens to Veer Narayan after the battle of Narayanala? Durgavati dies. The Mughals cannot push forward because it's the onset of monsoon. Remember that this is 24th of June. Once monsoon starts, those mountain passes become impassable. So they can't. The Mughal forces also realize that. Asaf Khan then retires and waits it out for another 2.5 months. Then when the weather dries up, he attacks Chauragarh, which is the capital fort of Rani Durgawati. Veer Narayan knows that this is endgame. He barely has a few hundred men left with him. He knows he's not going to make it. So he tells the two men in charge of the fort. One of them is Hindu, one of them is Muslim. And this is interesting because there are so many Muslim generals who fought for Rani Durgawati and gave their lives fighting for her. I mean, if we venerate Akbar for his tolerance and his liberal attitude, then we should venerate Durgavati as well, because she showed that exact same attitude. These were Miana Afghan generals, and every single one of them gave their lives fighting for her. And so even when he was leaving the fort, he left it to one Muslim and one Hindu general, asked them to do a jawhar. And they did a jawhar. And he goes out fighting. And he dies, he takes arrow blows and falls from his horse and is trampled to death. You must remember that there are two jawhars that happened. During Akbar's reign. The first is in the Battle of Chauragarh, the second is in the Siege of Chittor, which was a brutal siege in which 30,000 people died. So the history of central India, the history of Bundelkhand and the adjoining regions of Gondwana changed definitively after Rani Durgavati, as did the fortunes of the people that inhabited that land. Can you see the next one? This is Narayana. This is the exact same spot, and I just want to share a very charming story. I had gone there, it was August, it was rainy season, there were swirling clouds. I was standing there and I was saying, how will I know the exact spot where she fell? Who will tell me? And I was just standing there and I was wondering, and along comes this little shepherd boy, cowherd with his little. And I asked him, and he says, Madam, kya kar rahe ho? What are you doing here? And I said, mujhe wo jagah chahiye jahan Rani Durgawati ki demand. I'm looking for the spot where she fell. And he said, this is it. Yeah. And I started laughing. I said, what would a little goat herd know, right? I mean, so I went back to the Sangrahashala and to the Rani Durgawati Vishwavidyalaya, the university there. The head of the department of history, Professor Subhash Sharma, was my guide. I asked him, and he said, well, he's right. And then I started laughing. I said, how did a goat herd know? He said, this is Jabalpur. Everybody knows. That's the beauty, that every single person remembers the Rani in their own way. They haven't forgotten. Next please. This is another scene from the battle. As you can see, Salman is now down, and he was like a son to her, and he is mentioned again and again, including Abul Fazl, who mentions him by name. I cannot think of too many primary source historical records where an elephant, a mount, is mentioned by name. Next. Salman. That's him at the Samadhi Sthal. As you can see, he gets his own offerings, and of course there is a little bit of controversy here. The Gonds believe that he was a white elephant. Historical sources say that he was a dappled grey elephant. He was definitely an unusual color, but he wasn't white. But the Gonds believe that he was white. So they kind of liken him to Indra's Arab. That's it. The next one, please.
This is so uniquely Indian.
Totally.
Kind of way of being flying. Yeah.
And here you have the Diyabati. As you can see, even here, there is a little statue of Salman. She's never without son. Never. Her own son, her human son, is across the road. The one standing next to her is her elephant son. Next. This is Pachmatha. Pachmatha is a very interesting temple in Jabalpur. There are a lot of temples that are associated with Rani Durgawati's memory, Pachmatha being one of them. The reason why this temple is interesting, because there have been people say that she used to come here regularly, and I spoke to the Purohit of the temple who confirms that this temple is definitively of the Akbari period, so it goes back to the early 16th century. But if you walk around the temple complex, you will see that it is a very curious structure because it has clearly grown organically over the last 400 years. You see that the original structure was probably 14th century or late Kalachuri period, and then you see the Mughal era influences coming in, and of course then you later on see the Maratha influences also coming in towards the 17th and 18th century. So it is a very, very interesting structure which amalgamates architectural designs from across the centuries. Next, this is another picture of the Pachmatha Mandir. Next, this is the entire complex. It's very beautiful, very, very beautiful. Next. This is the Chaucer Jogini temple. Again, like Pachmatha, this site is also associated with the memory of Rani Durgawati. Again, this is not something that I put. There are some 250 steps going up to the...
This is in Bhiragarh, isn't it? This one?
It's in Jabalpur.
Jabalpur, Bhiragarh.
Bhiragarh.
Near
Yes.
that marble.
Near marble rocks,
Yeah.
yes. It has some 200 to 50 steps going up, which with my wobbly knees I could not do. So again, we used drones, and I used field researchers to get me inputs and pictures from there. As you can see, it has been mutilated very badly. It wasn't mutilated by Akbar. It was mutilated by Aurangzeb. And there is a very charming story, again documented by Alexander Cunningham, about how the inner sanctum, there is a Haragauri, Parvati and Shiv Murti on the Nandi. Okay, so that Murti remains intact. It has not been vandalized, and the legend is, and this is something that Cunningham records, that when Aurangzeb came to this part on his way to the Deccan campaign, he was going through this region, and he said, well, these are blasphemous Murtis, just destroy them. And the locals said, please don't do it, they are sacred. And he says, well, if there is any life in your gods, they will make it known. As of now, I see them to be only stone structures, so they can be destroyed. And when they came to the inner sanctum, a swarm of wasps came out and attacked the marauding soldiers, and they got scared and ran away. At any rate, the inner sanctum remains unmolested. If you go there, you will see that the Haragori that the Murti has not been vandalized. Next. This is one of the mandirs in the complex. Again, if you talk to the Purohits, which I did, you will find that they are quite upset that many of the murtis in this complex have been taken away to be kept in the museum in Bhopal and in Indore, and they feel that this is a living, breathing structure and should have been treated accordingly and not turned into museum pieces. This is one of the guys who I spoke of. This is a Havan Kund associated with Rani Durgawati's name. Again, we don't know, there is an archaeological survey board there, but there is no primary source talking about this Havan Kund. But like I said, every single inch of Jabalpur and the surrounding areas have something to do with it. Every single temple, every single tank, every blade of grass has some connection with her memory. So it's not unlikely, but I did not find finally primary source references to this. Mata Narmada, the most beautiful river in India. I mean, she is just so beautiful. And when I went there, and we were sitting there, we were watching the Aarti, it sort of transports you back in time and tells you how timeless past can be. People say past is dead and gone. Past never dies. It stays with you. The last slide. Can you go to the last slide, please? Okay, so this will bring an end to the slideshow. Here, this is Raja Shankar Nath and Raghunath. Raja Shankar Raghunath are, along with Rani Durgawati, are the other symbols of Gond veneration. The reason is that they were Rajgond rulers when the uprising of 1857 happened. 1857, 1858, when the mutiny, Sepoy mutiny, or the uprising of the Sepoys happened. They were the local rulers, local Rajput rulers, and they sided with the Sepoys. They sided with the Sepoys for a very simple reason. The British administration was overtaxing the region, and they went and cut off. One of the things that they did when they turned a region into what is known as central provinces, CP, central provinces, and it was put under Sir Richard Temple, who was the first governor of the central provinces. The first thing he did was cut off the Gonds' access to the best forest lands, saying that this forest belongs to the government now. As a result, the Gonds started starving. This happened in 1861. By 1870 and onwards, every year we have reports of famine, of epidemics, cholera, smallpox, devastating the region. How do we know? Again, these are mentioned in British tax records. So much so that entire Gond villages became abandoned, and the region was devastated, and the region that once was known as the Golden Gourd, right? It was referred to as Golden Gourd. It was so prosperous, became now a test case for destitution and death. And these two men, Shankar and Raghunath, father and son, realized that they had to do something to protect their people. And they decided with the Sepoys, and they were captured by the British and tied to the nozzle of a cannon and blown. So again, our history books don't tell us anything about that. But if you go and talk to the Gonds, they will tell you that there has been two resistances in the life of the Gond. The last one was Shankar Raghunath against the Gora, and the first, the original, right, against the Mughals.
Do you have any footage of drone?
Footage of?
Drone footage?
I do, but I share it with my publishers. So I'll try and get it. I do have a lot of drone footage. There's also a very nice drone footage that I got from MP Tourism of the Chauragarh Fort, which is breathtaking, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Singorgarh Fort, which is the second fort associated with Rani Durgawati, is now, after 500 years, being renovated. In 2021, then President Ramnath Kovind announced restoration effort, and now the newly launched Jabalpur Archaeological Survey will handle the restoration of the Singorgarh Fort. Chauragarh is a dump.
Jabalpur Archaeological Center is also responsible for Khajuraho restoration.
No.
It comes under that center.
No,
Jabalpur.
Khajuraho is separate. That is under Bhopal, the Bhopal circle. Jabalpur more or less handles, actually they didn't even have an archaeological circle there. They just got it in 2021. Before that they used to come under the Mandla Zilla circle, and those guys are, I had to talk to them and interact with them closely. They are useless. Because they didn't think of this history as being important. In fact, when I asked Madhya Pradesh tourism people sitting in Jabalpur, why is it that you do not have a Rani Durgawati trail? They had no answer.
And now station is there, right? Bhopal station.
It's only now, not Bhopal. Jabalpur station is
Bhopal station is known by them.
Jabalpur station.
Jabalpur station.
Yeah,
Jabalpur station, and also the Jabalpur University is called Rani
University is also
Durgawati.
known as.
And the hospital is called Rani Durgawati Hospital. The cricket stadium is called Rani Durgawati Cricket Stadium. All of that has happened in the last maybe 3 or 4 years. Before that, nothing, zero. And when I asked them, why don't you do a trail of Rani Durgawati? All the things that were associated with her. Mother Mahal is there. It's a beautiful, beautiful structure on top of a hill. They said, "Nahi ji, people want to go to Panna." So they stop in Jabalpur, they go see Marble Rocks.
You don't see only Marble Rocks.
Marble Rocks,
This, when I go
and then they will go and see tigers in Panna.
Only Marble Rocks.
Only Marble Rocks, that is all they will look at. But they don't really see. Marble Rocks is beautiful. Please do,
Yes.
by all means, go and see it. But it's
but-
not the only thing.
I just had an observation when you were narrating the whole thing. It's like a film. I think there should be a book should be
I
turned
hope so.
on.
I
That's
really hope so. Because we have not done justice to our Viranganas, and mainstream Bollywood, in fact, has not done justice to women historical characters. We have had Manikarnika, that too after
Manikarnika, yes.
so many years. But Rani Lakshmibai was a symbol of resistance, but she was by no means the only Virangana. I mean, we've had a long tradition of very, very competent queens, and we simply have not had enough popular content.
In Karnataka, there is this Rani Chennamma.
Chennamma,
She had won
yes.
against the British.
Yes.
Yes.
There's also Abakka Chauta,
Yes.
who won against, I think, the Portuguese. And then there was Rudrama Devi.
In the Beloo Mehra.
Yes. There are so many. That's why I'm saying that if you start, there's Didda, for instance, there's Prabhavati
Yes.
Gupta,
Yes.
who was Chandragupta Vikramaditya's daughter. These are queens who ruled for upwards of 10, 15, 20 years. They left their imprint. They were really, really ahead of their times in many ways, and our history books are silent.
But this is real film material. No doubt about that.
Yes, we should all actually propose to some big name
No,
Bollywood. It should be
I'm
picked
quite,
up.
I'm quite sure it will result.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't see Bollywood having an appetite for.
The demand is there. The demand is there.
I hope so.
The demand is
I
there.
hope so.
But I have to say, in a very short period of time, you have really made
Yeah.
Rani Durgawati alive, living for us.